Hello, my name is Muireann O'Connell and welcome to Parting Words, a podcast series from Rip.ie and proudly sponsored by An Post Insurance, supporting the plans that make life's hardest moments a little easier. You can find out more at anpostinsurance.ie. In this series, our guests will reflect on the messages we leave behind. Through stories, music and conversation, we explore how loss and grief shape us and how parting words can help us navigate life once our loved ones are gone. In this episode, we meet sports broadcaster and author Jacqui Hurley. In 2011, tragedy struck when her brother Sean died in a freak car accident after being caught in poor weather conditions. He was just 25 years old. Sean had had a promising career as a motorcycle racer. Here, Jacqui talks about Sean's zest for life, the unexpected conversation that changed the course of his family's goals after his death, and how messages from the other side have helped navigate her grief. Hello and welcome to Parting Words. Today I am joined by the wonderful broadcaster, Jacqui Hurley. Hi Jacqui, how are you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
It's lovely to have you here because we're talking about something that can be very hard but also very joyful. So I would like to ask you, tell us about the person that you've lost. Who are they and who were they to you?
My brother Sean, he passed away in 2011. He was 25 at the time. He passed away in a road traffic accident, which I think for a lot of people is the hardest part is kind of the suddenness of it. So look, I think it's also that he's the youngest person in the house and you're just not expecting it because he was so full of joy. He was such crack. Like everybody always says to me when they stop me and they talk about Sean, they talk about his big smile, his hugely infectious laugh, his just gregarious kind of personality and lust for life. And that's the thing that probably sticks with me the most is that I have two children who never got to meet that person. And I find that really hard that they have no idea how much crack he was, you know, and that's the thing that I'm always trying to share with people. I'm like, please talk to me about him because he was so brilliant and we should celebrate that, you know, because yes, we've lost an incredible amount by him not being here, but there is also a life to be celebrated because we were so grateful to have him for the 25 years we did.
And what in that time, because you were young as well, like you were about 27 when Sean died. What was people's reaction to you? It was, you know, he wasn't sick. It was something traumatic, sudden. It was a shock.
Yeah.
So did people want to talk to you or after a while were they like, we just shouldn't mention it?
I think people found it really hard because initially, I mean, there's the flood of people arriving for the funeral and the initial shock of it. And also, I think it was really hard at the time. And some people might find this really hard to understand why this would be a problem, but it really bothered me that like I was on TV when it happened. I was presenting the sport on the 6 o'clock news and he died at around 6 o'clock in the evening and people at home in the local village knew he had passed away before I did. And my dad knew I was on the news, so he didn't want to ring me because he knew the chaos it would that would happen. And he just said, look, I can wait 10 minutes and make that phone call, you know, but I just remember people in the village saying, sure, he couldn't be dead. Like, there's Jacqui on the TV. And you might think that that's a really weird thing to remember. But I do afterwards remember feeling like I hated that other people knew about it. I hated that people were talking about it before they were talking to me about it because I obviously had to get the worst phone call of my life from my father and then get into a car and drive, like pack all up my belongings because I didn't know when I'd be coming back to Dublin. My husband Shane was out at training. My dad had to ring him. He had to come into work to get me. Hugh Cahill and Marty Morrissey, two of my closest friends in RTE, just happened to be with me that night. Thank God they were there. But Shane had to come in and get me. And then, you know, just all the simple logistics of trying to get home, trying to get there. My sister is an airline pilot. She flies with British Airways and she was away in Edinburgh. So we had to get word to her that she had to get home. So everybody knew before she did as well. And it just bothered me. I don't know why, but I just found it hard that people, when they did come to talk to me, they didn't know what to say because they knew about it before I did. And I think people were really confused as to how do I express my emotion of I'm so sorry that we knew and also I'm so sorry to talk about it because people don't know what to say. You know, around grief, I'm sure you found this when your father passed away. People don't know how to express their own grief for your situation because yes, you've lost your brother, but in a lot of those cases, those people had lost their friend as well, and they're grieving, and they find it really hard to express their own grief, but they don't want to put their grief before yours, so they don't know what to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, because you're putting something on someone a lot of the
Exactly.
time. Sitting there and knowing where you're from in Cork and you're so well known, I can imagine just going, when it dawned on you that people were talking about it before you knew, because you were just living, you had those minutes where you were just living your life before it changed utterly, forever.
Yeah.
As your dad's look and just go, no, just hold off on this. What was that journey like?
Oh, it was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous, because my dad came, he had heard there was an accident and he went up the road, and so he came upon the accident. And so then the guards kind of had to speak to him, and then he was obviously dealing with his own tragedy and grief around that, but my mom wasn't at home. This will tell you now, this is like a window into the life of the Hurley family, who, as you know, for a very long time, because we've known each other for a long time, are always on the go. My mom was out at a dancing class. My dad was like, I'm going to have to get into the car and go and drive and get her. But he didn't want to arrive there in a Garda car because he didn't want to alarm her in front of all her friends. So he sort of arrived in and had to get her out and have that conversation with her, and then ring me and ring my sister. And, like, I do think it's very difficult for him to have had to go through all of those moments on his own without all of his family, So he had a lot of grief that we all wanted to make sure that he was okay, so we were as worried about my dad as anybody else, So then you're on your way home and you're checking in with mom and dad, and obviously it's a long spin from Dublin to Cork. So that 2.5 hours from RTE to Ballinhassig is probably the worst journey you'll ever make. But I had got to speak to my sister, which was great. But then you also have to go through the logistics of, my boss had to ring me and was like, oh my God, I'm after hearing this tragic news. Like, please go away. Like, don't come back until you're ready to come back. But, you have to put things in place, because you have loads of plans with people that you have to ring and cancel. And I remember making one of the weirdest phone conversations I had was, I was a judge on the William Hill Sports Book of the Year. And I remember ringing Declan Lee, who was looking after it. And I was in the car, and the judging thing was the next day. And I remember ringing him and saying, I'm not going to make the judges thing. My brother is after passing away. And I remember him saying, why are you ringing me? But it was just, in my head, I was like, jobs to do. Just, I need to do this and do this and do this and make sure that all these things are looked after so I can go home and look after my family,
But
it's weird, like, but I remember those things.
But sitting in that car, going home to Ballinhassig, and Sean didn't die too far away, you're like, I have to keep busy?
I think it was more, I've always had this sense of, I hate letting people down. So I would more be like, I wouldn't want anybody to think, oh, where is she? Why didn't she turn up? Or this wasn't organised, or this wasn't done. It was just, I was making sure that I had cleared all the things where I was supposed to be for the week, because I knew I was going. Now, I knew that the news was going to hit the public world at some point that night, because I think as well, you have to accept, when you have a very public-facing job, your private life is not always private. And that was another part of it, that, like, the next morning, our faces are on the front page of most newspapers. Like, that's horrendous. Like, that's the worst feeling you can have, because it's a very private grief, but it's a very public, in some ways, outpouring of emotion, because lots of people want to come and express their condolences and all that. But it's also like a tragedy. It's something that's happened in the blink of an eye. We haven't had time to adjust to it. And now suddenly, there's all of that side of it that is just extraordinarily difficult for a family to deal with, particularly in light that my sister wasn't even home at that stage. She didn't get back till the next day, so there was just all of that kind of ongoing. By the time we went to Cork Airport, there was people there, so like that was hard. But look, I think the most challenging part around it is when you get home eventually and you realise that he's gone and he's not coming back, and you walk through the door and your parents are sitting there, and it's not just your life has changed, but you realise that their life has changed, and that's, I think when I said that earlier, that the youngest person in the house, you never expect that they're going to go first. And I think that's the hardest thing, even now, for us all to accept, that we have a life, and we've done like amazing things in his legacy since then, which I am so eternally proud of. But we never should have had to do that.
And when you think back on your sibling grief, which I suppose it was, Sean was your baby brother. You
Yeah.
loved him so much. And now as a mother,
Yeah.
I know you can't put yourself into your parents' shoes. Of course you can't think of how Mairead was feeling that, anything like that. But I suppose, have you thought about that?
Yeah, and it's hard not to think like that now, because when you have kids, you couldn't imagine a world without them. And like, you've met my mom, she's one of life's joyful characters. Like, she's just genuinely, and I think probably one of the things that gives me strength is that she is still like that. Yes, it's very hard for her. And there's a lot of times when she is sad, and that's right. Like, there's a lot of hard days in the year. And it's not just anniversaries and things, it's just even moments where we might be somewhere and she thinks of him. Like, that's very difficult, because like, nobody grows up thinking that you're going to become a mother and then suddenly one day you're going to lose one of your children. It's just literally the worst thing that you could possibly think of. And I think because it was so sudden, and we had, and I'm not comparing it to anything else, but I think even it's just that immediate reaction of, how do I deal with this? He was here yesterday and now he's not, like, and also I think because of the profound conversation that they had 2 nights before he died, it was almost like, it's kind of surreal for her now, because when she thinks about sitting down and having that conversation that later became Sean's bucket list, I don't think she ever thought in her wildest dreams that that would be the last meaningful conversation she had with him. And I think that's probably, in some ways, she's so glad she had the conversation, but in another way, she's like, God, I wish I could have asked him so much more, do you know?
Tell us about the profound conversation that has kind of guided the Hurley family.
Yeah, so 2 nights before he died, he had come home. He was a plasterer by trade, and like, funnily enough, like, obviously lots of people talk about like my sporting career and all the great things that I've been able to do in my kind of job and all that as well, and even playing. But my brother had just signed a semi-professional motorbike contract before he died. He was a brilliant racer. He was the Irish national champion when he died. And he kind of said to my mom, like, I'm working as a plasterer, but it's hard work. And it was like November, you're sitting there, misery weather. It's awful time to be outside and to be on the road. And he was going out doing a job, and he'd come in and he'd said to Mom, I want to do more. I want to do more with my life and the things that I want to do, And for some reason, which I will never for as long as I live know, my mom took out a pen and paper and she just started asking him questions. What do you want to do? What are you thinking? What about this? And she just started writing down these notes. And like, you can imagine, I'm sure your listeners as well, 25-year-old boys don't have those conversations with their mothers like that ever. So when she had the opportunity, she seized it. She kind of thought, "Geez, I have an hour here with my son. I'm going to take it." And she just started kind of provoking thought about, what would you like to do? What would you like to be? What kind of things are we talking about? And some of his ideas were, he wanted to get super fit. He wanted to run a marathon. He wanted to do a triathlon. He wanted to do like superbike trials, different things. But then he had like big aspirations. Like, he wanted to race world superbikes. He wanted to be a world superbike winner, big aspirations. But then like, he wanted to be a millionaire, and he wanted to run a pub. He wanted to own a shop. There was loads of different, like, just random things along the way. And my mom, because she had them all written down, it was when I walked in the door the night that he died, it was the first thing I saw on the table. And I remember I picked it up and I said, "What is this?" And my mom said, "That's the last meaningful conversation we had, and they're kind of his bucket list ideas." And I said, "God, why did you write them down?" And she said, "I don't know." And I said, "Ma'am, you must have had thousands of conversations with him, and I've never seen you write one single thing down." And she said, "I don't know. Something in my head just told me to write them down so that I could push him to do them," or something like that. But since that day, even over the course, I think the first time it came into my mind that we might start doing these things was that week. We were sitting down having a cup of tea, and it was a Wednesday night he died. And I'd say it was like the Saturday or the Sunday after the funeral. And we were sitting down and I was looking at the list, and I just said to Mama, I was like, "I think we could do these things." And she was like, "Oh, here we go now." She was like, "How? And, how would we make these things happen?" And I just think we were given that list for some reason to carry on his legacy. I don't know if people believe in that or not, but I do. And I feel like he didn't know what was going to happen, but somebody knew. And some sort of divine inspiration gave us that list to be able to live our life chasing his dreams. And whether it's been a guiding light or whatever it is, but it has certainly given our family great strength. It has given so many friends of ours. You know, when you asked me that question about what do people say to you, the bucket list gave people a reason to be able to talk, because the hardest thing people found was, how do I go to her and express my grief and say, I'm thinking of you, without upsetting her? Whereas the bucket list, people come over and go, here, come here, I'd love to run the triathlon, or I'd do the marathon. Or when we got married, we had said to people, do you know, would anybody be up for running a mile? Thinking a couple of people might run a mile. But then like 200 people were like, I'd love to run a mile, you know. So it was just, it gave us a purpose of people could come and show up for us. And there's a great power and strength in that. And because Irish people are great at showing up. And actually the bucket list to me has been the honour of a lifetime to be able to achieve his dreams.
Have you, as a family, have you sat down and talked about, have you like sat down as a group and gone, well, this is why we were given this? Have you talked about a faith or a guiding hand or something else behind it? Or are you just doing the list?
No, we have and we haven't. Like, we've all gone to mediums and that kind of thing over the time, and lots of people will be skeptical about all those kind of things. But I did find comfort in that in a little way, and I would have had little signs and inklings over the years that there was something like, so his racing number was 109, right? Every time I check into a hotel, I'm always getting room number 109. All the time. And this is not like just in Ireland where people might know and they think, oh, that'd be a lovely thing to do for her. This is like, I could go abroad. I could be in Barcelona for a weekend and I'll check into a hotel. Here's your room number, lady, it's 109. Like, it's weird, like, you know. Or I could be at a race and like songs come on. Like, so his favourite song was Flo Rida, Good Feeling. And that song will come on all the time. Or just when you're having a really bad time, that'll come on. There's moments like that where we would come home and we would talk about that. And I'd say, oh, this happened today. And then we'd all get a great kick out of that. Like, my mum and dad all the time would throw it in. We have a family WhatsApp group and they'd be like, guess where we're staying tonight? And they're in room 109 or whatever it is. Like, you know, and I do think I'm not the most religious person, but I have a faith and I have a sense that he's with us, if that makes sense. Like, that there's some sort of a guiding light that he's with us. So I don't know what you call that, but it's some sort of spirituality, I guess.
And you just look so happy, like when you're talking about that.
Yeah, and like, I'd like to think that, you know, look, there's a great sadness that he's not with me. Like, I would love nothing more than my children to see him and to grow up having Uncle Sean as the absolute crack merchant that he was. And there's a huge sense of, you know, sadness that comes with that. But equally, you can sit back and you can be sad for the rest of your life. But then your family are losing more than just the person who's gone. You're losing your sense of purpose. And my family are not like that. Like, we've always been, I don't know, like, happy people. Yeah. We are. You know, anybody who knows, like, my dad is like that. My sister Trina is like that. They are just, I don't know, like, easy people to be around. And I wouldn't want that to change just because the worst has happened. And I would always say now, even like when I walk into a situation and it looks like it's going to be really bad, and I always kind of say, oh, what's the worst that could happen? Because the worst has already happened to us. We've already found a way to get over that. So there's very little that would kind of stop me in my tracks and make me, you know, like, yes, you can have really terrible situations, but like, we've already come through the worst thing that could happen to my family. So there's very little else that's going to stop me in my tracks.
And to have that behind you, but to have your whole family behind you in that way, because as you said, like Dave and Mairead, they're just, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get it going. Because I know when you have T-shirts on about Sean's bucket list,
yeah,
like when you're wearing that, when you're actually going through them, there was a very special thing that happened this year. And I think this is one of the big ones for you. And you set up a team for Sean.
Yeah. But you know, though, we didn't think it was going to end up like this. Like, the reality is, my dad had really thought, so one of the things was he wanted to be a world superbike rider. And he wanted to set up a racing team to help the next generation of Irish motorbike riders, right? Which is a lovely aspirational thing for a 25-year-old to have already, because he was one of the young Irish riders.
Yeah.
I was like, who do you think you're helping? Like, it's you know? But my dad in particular, and one of Sean's best friends, Paul Tobin, had said, I think we could do that. You know, I think we could set up a little fund, help some Irish riders, and we'll do that. So they put together the 109 Award, and they had helped a lot of young Irish riders. But I don't know if we ever thought that it could get to that level. Like, we ran a Who Wants to Be a Thousandaire night down in Cork, and Ryan Tubridy came down and hosted it. And we raised about 50 grand or more on the night. And half of it went to the charity Cry, who I'm an ambassador for and feel very strongly about the work that they do for cardiac risk in the young. But then the other half was to set up this young rider development fund. And we thought, yeah, we'll be able to help a few riders. There'll be a nice few pound in the kitty. We'll all just keep contributing to it, and we'll be able to do that for a few years. But once Paul Tobin got it into his head that there was a possibility we could do this, suddenly we were racing on the British race circuit, and then they won. And then it was like, well, the next step is going to the World Championship. But it was, can we do this? You know, can a small team from Cork compete with like multi-million euro teams? And somehow he found a way to go, yep, we can go and do this, we can get some sponsors. And like, a lot of the people who've been behind it from the start were people who knew Sean. So there's a real like family feeling around the whole team. But then this year we went and won the World Championship in Jerez in Spain. And Mom and Dad had said to me, look, would you come to the race? And I've always found it very hard to go to motorbike races, because like, it's probably the thing that makes me miss Sean the most, because I know when I go to those tracks, he's not there. So I've always found it very hard to be at the racetrack. Even though my mom and dad take great comfort out of being at the track, me and my sister have probably been a little bit the other way, where we've always found it difficult to be there because the person you want to see most isn't there. And he was always in such joyful mood on the track. So I found that hard. But I had said to myself, look, go and be there for your parents. And I'll never forget the moment when Beñat Fernandez crossed the line as the world champion. And for people who haven't seen it, you should go and YouTube the race, because for him to have won the race, in my life as a sports presenter, I see a lot of crazy things happening. But he was leading the race, then dropped back to fifth. And in the last corner, he made a maneuver. He came in on the inside and he won the race by like 1900ths of a second. It was one of the most outrageous sporting achievements of the year, whether my family were involved in it or not.
Can he hold it on the run to the line? Here they come, up towards the checkered flag. Beñat Fernandez has done it! Beñat Fernandez wins the FIM Supersport 300 World Championship. Leads home David Salvador Torres, completes the podium, and Team 109 erupts in celebration. Incredible last corner from Beñat Fernandez. The Supersport 300 rookie has won the world title.
Yeah, Team 109, they've raced in memory of Sean Hurley for 14 years, and now they're world champions. And for Beñat Fernandez, such a good performance, but what a last lap. Absolutely crazy. What a way to sign off from Supersport 300 as well. But unbelievable performance from Beñat.
But I looked over and, you know, my family are there wearing the T-shirts and everything, and my mom is bawling, crying in the paddock. But there was so many people came over to her, and they were all there saying, you know, we're so proud of you and your family and what you've achieved. But to have done something like that, I can't even put into words like how impossible it was what they've achieved this year. But it was all for Sean. You know, like, I met Paul Tobin afterwards and I was like, can you believe we have done this? And he said, yeah, I can, because there's very little that man wouldn't have done. So if we can do it for him, we'll just do it. And suddenly the impossible becomes possible. And then you're thinking, why? Well, like, how are we going to continue to do this? But there's some sort of an inner strength that's in all of the people involved in this who just really want to do something special so that he will never be forgotten. Because even around the paddock, people know his name who never even met him before. And that's an incredible legacy.
It's amazing. Like, it's truly special to feel like he's with you.
Yeah.
Does he feel like he's with you?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I like to feel that he is watching over everyone. You know, Paul Tobin had a really funny line after they won the World Championship, and he was asked by one of the commentators, you know, what would Sean Hurley say about this? And he said, he'd say a few things that I probably couldn't say on TV, you know. And I think that's probably when people, even when I put up his picture on social media or anything, the amount of people who say to me, oh, he's so like you. You know, he looks like me, but he acted like me, and he had that kind of a, you'd know we were related, you know. So I think in a way I wouldn't be doing him a service if I didn't continue to live. Like, even when it was his anniversary, I was kind of saying, I miss that huge smile and the commitment to the crack. But the way he lived life is the way I would like to. And I wish every day that he was here. But because he can't be, I want to make sure that we continue to live the way that he did, because we would be doing it wrong otherwise.
In that 14 years, as you move further away from the moment that changed your life, where your brother Sean was gone, how has your grief changed?
Yeah, it's funny because, do you know, you probably find this as well. People say things and it's kind of so flippant, they don't even know they're saying it. And people say the strangest things after funerals. You know, they'd say like, oh, time's a great healer and sure, you'll get over it in time. And you're thinking like, I can't get over this because he'll never be back. And he was my brother. It's not just some random person in the street. Like, my life will never be the same again. But I do think you learn to just live in a way. Like, those people were probably not wrong. It might just be a difficult way of saying it, and just that slam of grief to somebody when you're saying, and I do always say that to people, just remember that person's grief is going to change over time, but they might just not be ready to hear that yet, you know? And I do think maybe that sense of having that time and knowing what we've achieved for him since then probably gives me a little bit more comfort in knowing, okay, I'm not going to see him again, but I can still think about him and I can still feel like we did that for you. Or did you enjoy that, Sean? Or, you know, I'm not a big person for going to the grave. I don't find it therapeutic in the way that some other people, like I'm sure there's people who listen to this who love going to the grave every day. My mom and dad go to the grave all the time. I was never like that. I never found peace with that. But I would, in my quiet moments, sit and talk to him or think about him, or I have no problem doing that, but it's never been a place for me, if that makes sense.
At An Post Insurance, we know how important it is to take care of your family. So even when you're not around, your family will know what to expect. With our funeral insurance, you can cover your own funeral costs from as little as €20 per month, with no medicals required if you're aged between 50 and 75 and resident in the Republic of Ireland. Taking care of not being there. Call us now on 0818 22 2222.
Were there, you know, traditions around death and funerals and the sandwiches, you know, the funeral sandwiches in Ireland? Were there things that helped you at the time, or were you, get this the hell away from me?
No, and I actually found the comfort of our neighbours and friends was unbelievable. Like, where I live in Ballinhassig is very rural Ireland. It's off like a sided, like a village, but like we're up the road on the way to Kinsale. Lots of people would know our house. And all of our neighbours who are like farmers and all that kind of thing opened their fields, and they were like, right, we'll look after the parking, you know, like, because it's obviously like it's in the middle of nowhere, you know, so you're trying to get people to come out and steward on the road, and people were landing in with sandwiches and flasks of tea and whatever, but there was just people everywhere, you know. It was just like an amazing outpouring of emotion, which I actually sometimes, I don't think people who don't live in Ireland understand, because I think an Irish funeral, having lived through it and experienced it, I just don't think there's anything like it in the world. There really isn't. And in a weird way, there is a comfort in that, because I can't imagine what it would have been like to not have all those people around us, to not wake up and there's people in your kitchen every day, you know. And we brought Sean home, which actually, I really, now that I look back, I really I'm so glad we did that. And lots of people don't get to do that. And lots of people don't have what we had. Like when your father died, it was COVID, you know, and it was a really difficult time for you and your family to not be able to have people there in the house. But we had thousands and thousands of people come through the house. Like, it was amazing. My dad was like, I don't even think we have enough cups to be able to deal with all these people. But you just get on with it and you just do it. And I do think there's a lovely way Irish people have of just showing up for each other and just being there and turning up and doing the right thing, you know? You know, sometimes when, and this is, I hope this comes across in the right way, but sometimes you're not able for people, right? And that happens in every walk of life. Somebody's going to knock on your door because they're trying to do the right thing by you and they want to knock and just check in and make sure you're okay. But sometimes you're just not okay with that. And one of our neighbours gave my mum a great piece of advice that was leave a coat at the door so that if you're not able for people, you can actually just meet them on the way out and keep going. And actually, it's the one thing that I've said to a lot of people, and I do hope people take this in the spirit that it's meant, that I do think sometimes when you're not able for people, it's actually okay to say that and to go, because you can be having the worst day of your life and it's really hard to just express that to people. And maybe you're a quiet, silent crier and you don't want to, like, I don't cry a lot in front of people, but my mom and my sister are much more emotional than me and my dad. So it'd be very rare people would see me and my father being outwardly upset, whereas my mom and my sister are much better at the openness of their grief. But I'd find that then when I got that piece of advice, I was like, perfect, because if I'm not able for that, I'll just meet people on the way out the door. Oh, sorry, I was just going, come back another time when I actually am a bit more able for that. And I think, you know, maybe some people might take something from that today that they might say, that's a good idea, you know, because you need to be able to deal with grief in your own terms and when you're ready for it. And if you're having a bad day, it's okay to close the door and just have your bad day. But then when you're having a good day, open the door and go and meet people, because it's okay to live again. That's the other thing. You know, I think for us anyway, and like far be it for me to be like worship signaling about how other people should live their lives. But I do think it's important that you didn't die, that you live. And that's what my mom and dad, I've seen so many families go through the worst of the worst after somebody passes away, but to watch them and the strength and the love they have for each other still and the way that they've been able to live their lives gives me great strength. And that's a big thing. You know, lots of people said that to me. They were like, keep an eye out for your mom and dad, make sure you look out for them. And I've been glad to see the way that they've continued with each other.
Because they came together
did.
In such a way.
Yeah.
For you, and I think about you a lot actually, and it's because of how Sean died on the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And it's talked about in our, you know, there's ad campaigns.
Yeah.
We grew up in the time of the RSA ad with Body to Body. You know, Samantha Mumba can't listen to that song.
I can't watch that ad.
I can't, like, you can't watch it. You wouldn't be able to.
I'd walk out of the room if that ad came on. I found it really hard, you know. And there was another one there recently, the Tracy family, when she's talking about losing her son. I just found that really difficult as well, because their lives were changed by somebody else's actions on the road, you know. And those ad campaigns, as right as they are, like they're the right thing to have, you know, to warn people about the dangers of the road. But they're an intrusion in your own life also as well, because they're a constant reminder of what you've lost, you know.
Because to some people, you know, they don't know Sean, and he's a statistic that's used in that. Is that?
And it's horrendous, because every time you see it on those ad campaigns, they say such and such amount of people have died on the roads and this happens. And it's hard not to think about that. But he's not a statistic to me. Do you know what I mean? That night, there was another man died in Cork on the roads, and I think about his family a lot actually as well. And it was a completely separate accident, but it was just one of those really bad nights, 100-kilometre winds, and fatalities happen on the road in those kind of conditions. Like, I think he just aquaplaned on the road, you know, and I don't know. You that's the hard part. You don't know what happened, but I do find it hard when sometimes you are looking at those statistics and there's so many families whose lives have been ruined by those moments, and then they're just laid bare as if they were all the same, because they're not. Every family has different grief from multiple different moments that were horrendous for them.
And what do you make of it? Because it's never out of the news. It must be a constant reminder, especially in your job.
Yeah, it is. And to be honest, that again, I try to stay away from
Okay.
it, because I think if you thought about it too much, you would upset yourself. And like I've said before, I try to live mostly in a happy place, you know, and I try to honor his legacy by doing that. And I think the more you get bogged down on the sadness of life, because like there's an awful lot of it around. And it's not just like we lost Sean in an accident, but the amount of people who are listening to this who lost people through sickness, illness, you know, so many other tragedies of life that are inexplicable to them. There's none of them are the same. Like that's the thing. We're all living different grief journeys. But it's important to be respectful of each other and just remember that just because it was a car accident, he's not a statistic. He is somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's boyfriend, you know, like that's a hard life, you know.
So for you, do you try to remember well or do you struggle with it?
No, I remember well. And because he was such a character, the amount of people who even around his anniversary send me messages of like him just being him and being really funny. Like he was really funny. And when you get those moments, like, or there'd be a random video we might share in the family WhatsApp of him, I'm glad we have them because it does make you laugh. And I try to just, even when your mind goes to the sadness, I try to always remind myself, like my mom always says, and she's so right. She's like, will you be sad that you don't have him for the rest of your life? Or would you be happy that you had him for 25 years? She had him for 25 incredible years. And she said even the night that he passed away, she was still grateful. You know, she could be horrendously sad that her baby had been taken away. But I do also think she had 25 years of pure crack and joy and laughter and a lovely life with him. And he lived at home as well. So remember, they were seeing him every day through it all and living that with him. So their life changed because, like, yes, they lost their son, but also their household became quite different after that, which is hard. But I do think even they choose to remember well. Yeah.
And in remembering well, because if anyone has seen a picture of, and maybe people will Google and see a picture of Sean.
Yeah.
Like you're striking how alike
Yeah,
you
no,
are.
I get that.
And do you see it now?
I do, yeah. Probably see it more now than I did at the time because, like, he was 6'3" with a shaved head and an earring. I probably don't really feel that's my era, you know. But I see it now, and I see the smile, and I see the lightness, and I probably see maybe a bit of the wit, you know, like that kind of lust for the crack. Yeah. I do get that, yeah.
And you mentioned your gorgeous kids, Lily and Luke.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't know their Uncle Sean.
Yeah.
And for you, has it been important to tell them about him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. We talk about him all the time. Oh, yeah. Like, wouldn't that be the worst thing, though, if you didn't? Do you know, like, I can't imagine people who've lost somebody and don't talk about them. I'd find that really hard because I think it's important to share those stories. And I think, like, so Luke the other day was asking me, what did Uncle Sean play? And he knew he was obviously a motorbike racer, you know, but I said, oh yeah, he was also very good at hurling and rugby. And he was like, was he? Because Luke loves hurling. And he said, was he good? And I said, yeah, he was actually, yeah. And I said, and he played rugby. Did he? And like, he was all inquisitive about it. And like, I think that's great. I encourage that because I want him to know more. You know, I want him to start to think, am I like him? Do I have some of his traits? Am I more like Dad? Am I more like, you know, Uncle Sean? Am I like Mom? You know, because kids, we should embrace their inquisitive natures. And I don't want, you know, now sometimes they would ask inappropriate questions like, tell me what happened and all this, which I don't really want to get into with kids either. You know, like I think there's a time and a place for understanding. They know he died in a car accident, but I don't get into specifics with them because I don't really think it's not going to change their life. You know, they know what happened, you know, and I don't want them to have to take on board our grief either. You know what I mean? I think it's important that they remember they had an Uncle Sean who was great fun. He was 25 and he lived a great life. And I think that's enough for them right now. I'm sure they'll ask more questions as the years go on, but I do think for them maybe more than anything else. I don't want to bring any fear into their lives either. Does that make sense?
It does, because they have to live their lives.
Exactly.
Totally get that.
Exactly. And I don't want them to live in fear. If I get into a car, is that going to happen to me? Because that's not how we live our lives. You can't live like that. There are, as we said earlier, how many people get into a car and never expect that it's going to be them? But I think you want to encourage, well, I certainly do anyway. I want to encourage my children to live life to the absolute max. Like, I think anybody who knows me knows that's fairly in the spirit of how we go. But I want my kids to live like that as well. And I want to encourage that as much as possible.
Did you find people were intrusive about how Sean died?
Yeah, loads of that. Like, we would have had random people come and go, and what happened? And was he speeding? Or was he on the phone? And I was there, well, no, he wasn't doing either of them. But also, it's none of your business. You know, it was just a freak accident. But people do ask random questions. And I do think, when I talked earlier about, like, Irish people are the best in the world at showing up for each other, sometimes we do have a knack of asking inappropriate questions and reminding ourselves, oh, maybe I've overstepped the line there. And we definitely had not a lot of that, but a bit of that, all right. But to be honest, I just never engaged in any of that. I was like, oh, look, you know, whatever.
You sidestepped it.
I was like, I'm absolutely not being drawn into this by somebody, you know, because it's not anybody's business. Do you know what I mean? And also, it's not going to change the outcome, you know. But I think it's just we have a nature of gossiping in this country about everything, and not just death. But it's just, there is a sense of, we want to know what happened and we want to talk about it, and we want to be the one who knows what happened. You know, maybe that's what it is. I'm not sure, but. Yeah, I certainly never engaged in any of that. But there was a part of, like, protecting him also, that it's like, just so you know, he actually didn't do anything wrong here. He just lost his life because the weather was really bad and he obviously lost control of the car or something like that. I don't know. So maybe there's a bit of you that's protecting his legacy, but it's not going to bring him back.
I can't imagine that. Some days having to feel, how dare you? Because, you know, if someone has cancer, they're never going to be, oh, well.
What did you do to get that?
What did you do to get that? Yeah. Do you know that sort of way?
Yeah, but that's like, but we do that by nature, though. Okay. I do think there's a little bit of us in it that we're, and what about that? Because we're inquisitive. Like, you know, some people might call it nosy, but I do think in most cases it's coming from a good place.
So you choose to take that there's no meanness in it?
No, and I never thought there was either, by the way. I never genuinely did. I always thought people were just asking, just to be like, and what happened? And, oh, okay, you know, it was never I don't think there would ever be any malice in any of that, genuinely.
So for you, is Sean in the past tense, or do you still talk about him in the present tense?
Oh, always the present tense, yeah. Like, I know he's not here, but that doesn't mean that I can't continue to talk about him and tell stories about him as if it was yesterday. You know, like, if the other day we were kind of, oh, do you remember when he did this or whatever? Sure, that could have been last year or the year before or whatever. It's not, the fact that it's been 14 years is probably what's the most difficult thing to comprehend, because in 14 years, like, my life has changed completely. We got married 6 months after Sean died, which, you know, is a big moment in your life. We've had 2 children since he died. We've moved to Dublin. You know, like, we've had a lot of big life moments that he wasn't there for. And that's probably the most difficult thing. But I still, in a way, I like to kind of think that he's there with us through all those moments. Yeah. Like, the day of the wedding, I had 4 bridesmaids, Shane had 4 groomsmen, but then when Sean died, we chose not to replace him and just have 3 groomsmen and 4 bridesmaids. And the lads were like, that's grand, sure, I can just dance with 2 girls, I'd be delighted. But we made sure that, you know, some people might come in and go, oh, that photo looks unbalanced. But I'm like, well, it's unbalanced for a reason, and I want you to know why it's unbalanced. You know, I could have easily just said, ask one of your other friends to be a groomsman, but actually, Sean can't be replaced in a photograph or in life. And I'd prefer that people know that. And then anytime they walk into our house and you see photographs of our wedding, it's important that people know that there's a reason why there's a hole in that photograph.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, like, it's real life. It's real life to us. It's not just a photograph of a moment. It's a reminder of what he meant to us, that, like, Shane and him were so close. And, like, Shane doesn't have a brother. He just has a sister, Jamie, who you know as well.
Yeah,
and, like,
Shane's your husband.
Yes, sorry, Shane's my husband. And he because he was so close to Sean, he wanted him to be there for him. You know, he wanted to be having the crack with Sean, like nothing to do with him being my brother, you know. So, like, he also lost his friend, you know. So you're trying to make sure that people recognize that his side of the photograph is missing something too.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're carrying forward together as a couple into
Totally.
this new phase of
Yeah,
life, which is
completely.
beautiful.
Yeah.
When it came, like, you know, you're from Ballinhassig, and as someone who's kind of, you know, half country as well, you know, I was around death at a very young age. Do you know, your parents would be going to funerals every 5 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, my mom still pulls out RIP.ie every day and like takes out the paper to see where does she need to go for funerals. Like this is her on the regular, like, you know.
Let's go, let's do this and what's happening.
And her father would have done the same and she's inherited it. I said, if this is what I'm inheriting, I need to know about it now, you know.
I need to stock up on petrol. Do I need an electric car?
Exactly.
So there, was this... Sean wasn't your first experience of death, or was he? Like, had you experienced it before?
No, we had lots. I mean, my grandparents had died, and
Yeah.
I'd been around death, and I'd certainly seen that, and you know, we'd been at lots of various different funerals before, so it certainly wasn't my first experience of death.
Did it change your feelings about death, though?
Yeah, because I think when you realize what it means to you, like when your grandparents die, it's incredibly tragic, and my father's parents had died when he was younger, so I never got to meet them. But my mother's parents, I knew them obviously very well. And then when they passed away, you're deeply sad around the experience, but they are your grandparents. And there's sort of this understanding that at some point it's going to happen. But I think grief when it's a young person is harder for everybody involved.
Yeah.
I think maybe there was just grief is very difficult in any stage of life, whether you're 90 or 9. But there's different levels of understanding for people. And I think for us in our house, it was when I saw the outpouring of emotion that everybody understood that. And we kind of went through that together. Maybe that's when your grief journey changes a little bit, that you understand this time it's a little bit different. Yeah.
And does it still catch you by surprise, the grief, or do you expect it?
Yeah, it's weird. I find it's the unexpected days. It's not necessarily like anniversaries, birthdays, those kind of things. You expect that there's going to be, you know, Christmas, like when we're all together. You know that they're going to be difficult days. It's kind of the random days when he just pops into your head that's when you're thinking, God, I'd love to tell him that. You know, they're the days where I think grief is a bit unexpected because it does change. Like, there's no point in saying I'm very different now as a 41-year-old than I was as a 27-year-old who lost her brother. Like, my life has changed completely. I'm obviously in a, you know, very different phase of my life now. And probably with a bit of age comes the maturity of understanding how you live your life as well and what you choose to do and how you choose to continue yourself. And a lot of that is, I don't want to leave a bucket list that my brother left behind. I want to do all the things in my life so that I'm not leaving a piece of paper for somebody else to carry on my legacy. And I think, well, I would like to think that anybody who knows me can see that. It's quite obvious in the way we live our lives that that's what we do. If there's something that we want to do, like the year after Sean died, myself and Shane sat down and we were like, right, what are we doing? After we getting married, where are we going? And we went to the Super Bowl. We went on a Lions tour. You know, we went around the world. We did like crazy like events, you know, in terms of like triathlons, mad cycles, like just crazy things that we were like, do you think we could do that? Do you think we could do that? And we still do that now. You know, we just, every year we generally draw up a set of goals and there'll be like sort of a work goal, a personal goal and a life goal, you know, something that we want to achieve, some maybe like a fitness goal, whatever it is. And we just do it because why would you not? You know, life has taught us enough that you cannot leave a day unfinished. You have to just go after it. And whether that's in my job, like I'm very privileged to have the job I have, but I also know it's not forever. Like next week they could decide it's somebody else doing all those gigs. And when that time comes around, I'd be totally fine with that because I have lived it and I've given my absolute maximum effort to everything. And then when it stops, grand, I'll be happy because there's nothing that I haven't tried. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And you really do live it out, the profound way Sean has had an effect on your life. I think you would
And maybe I
have been like
wouldn't
that.
have. I don't know, yeah, because people say, would you have been like that otherwise? Maybe I would, I don't know.
Have you thought about that?
I don't know. I do think about that. I probably think we were like that anyway. I don't know. You knew me before he died, so I don't know. Maybe you're a better judge of it than I am. Like, I would like to think I probably am the same, but I think my zest for it is probably a bit more now because I know how finite it all is. And I understand that at some point it'll be my turn. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm weirdly more understanding around death than I ever was before he died, because I think it makes you appreciate life, you know. Like, now I really appreciate life, and I appreciate, like, I'm healthy and my kids are healthy and my husband is healthy and my family are healthy. And lots of people who are listening to this are not as lucky as we are. And you might say that's a really weird word to use when you've lost somebody in the circumstances you have. But since that point, he's been looking out for us, and the rest of us have been good. And we've been very lucky to have some great life experiences together and some really happy times together as a family. And I'd like to think that he has something to do with that.
Are you afraid of death?
No. I'm probably more afraid that I I didn't get to do all the things that I wanted to do, you know. I'd be afraid if I was to go in the morning about leaving my children behind and my husband and my family. But I'm not afraid to die. And I think that's a healthy way to live. I think you can go and, as I like, you know, when I'd say to Trina, I'd be like, look, we'll just rip it every day. And we do. And if you go, then you go. But like, at least you've said, I gave that a good lash. You know, I'd like for people to think, you know, when people say, what would you love to be remembered by? I'd love to be remembered as somebody who tried to live it to the absolute maximum. And if there was something like on my headstone, that's probably what I'd put. She lived it, you know.
You must feel that. You must feel, because I'm listening to you now and I'm like, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, get off the couch and do something. Do you know, like, honestly, it is. And that's the sort of person that you are.
Yeah.
I can just feel your love of life. And we're talking about death.
Yeah, I know. But then there's two sides to every coin, right? You can be afraid to live because you've lost somebody, or you can choose to live and live it to the max because you've lost somebody. And that's the way we are. So my family could have just as easily sat at home and grieved every day and like worried about what are we going to do without Sean? How are we going to live without him? But I was 27 when he died. Imagine sitting at home for the rest of my life. That's a lot of years sitting and wallowing in your own self-pity. And I know that's not for everybody. And some people might sit and say it's okay to sit down. And of course it is. And we did that. I took a month off work and hardly left the house, you know. So we definitely did that as well. But I do think at some point when you start realizing they would want you to live, he would be raging if we were sitting down in the house. Like, my mother got up on a scrambler motorbike and we went doing trials. Like, the woman nearly poleaxed herself. And I remember that day thinking, what is she doing? Like, oh my God. But she was there. Sure, look, he'd want me to do this. And off she went on the bike. And like, that's still to this day, we watch the video and I'm there going, there's no other way in life she would have got on that motorbike. But she did it because she was like, look, he'd want me to do this. I'm going to get up here and off we go, you know. And that's what has given us that sense of purpose to go and do and to live like that. And it's a weird thing to be grateful for. But there is that sense of he is pushing and guiding you to live like that.
What a beautiful sense to have. I can't believe Muireann Hurley is one of those people on a scrambler bike.
I know,
I'm always
yeah.
giving out about. Muireann, stop it.
I know.
You don't have to answer this, but where do you think Sean is?
That I don't know. I'm not, like I said, I'm not overly religious. I definitely have a faith that he is somewhere in the afterlife. And I would like to think that I'd see him again. I love that idea in my head. So this is slightly strange, but my sister, when we were younger, actually she still has it now, but she has one of those weird, there's some people in life who have like a sixth sense where like they see dead people. Like genuinely, my sister has that, right? When we were younger, we were sharing a bedroom. People used to come visit her all the time. Like she just had one of those. She could just talk to people. I don't know, like some sort of clairvoyancy. I don't know. But she has it. I do not have it. I thought it was the weirdest thing ever in my house. She'd get up in the middle of the night and she'd be up walking, talking to people, like mad stuff, right? But I was so used to it that I thought nothing of it. So when he used to come to visit her, I used to take great comfort in it because I thought it was lovely. And the night he died, she described the two people who came to get him, and it was my grandparents. And I remember her telling my father, she was like, this man and this woman, and she described them. And my mom and dad were like, oh my God, And my sister has had this for a long time, right? I know this is a complete by the by, right? But I'll tell you this story anyway. Years ago, before we moved to Australia, my mother was driving into Bantry Hospital, which had only been just built, right? And my sister was in the back car and I was in the back of the car. And this man stopped my mother and he asked her where the morgue was. And my mother said, I actually don't know. I haven't been to this hospital yet. And my sister said, if you go down around the back of the hospital, drive down and it's the third building at the back. And the man looked at her and then he looked at my mother and my mother said, don't mind her, she's only a child. And then the man said to her, how would you know that? And my sister said, sure, didn't myself and my brothers build it? And my mom looked at Trina and she was 4 years of age. And there was like that, just this weird aura with her. She always had it. And so that night when my grandparents, as she said, came to collect my brother, she took massive comfort in it. And I've always felt Trina, even since, has just been had a closeness to him that she could kind of share with us somehow. So even though I'm not that religious, I always found that maybe Trina just had a passage to him or something, And I I don't know, it's very strange and hard to kind of articulate that. But I'm sure there's lots of people who are listening who've had those kind of experiences in life. And I'm sure there's loads of people who have that. It certainly wasn't me. And I was always like I said, when we were younger, being like, what is this? But now that I'm older, I have complete appreciation and an understanding for it.
That must have been for your parents, hearing something like that. I know people could go one of numerous ways.
Yeah.
Did they love that?
They did, because listen, my sister saw the statue move in Ballinspittle when lots of people said it never happened. But Trina, as a 3-year-old child, I remember saying to my mom and dad, the lady, she's coming down off the hill. Now, I never believed in any of that kind of stuff. I never felt that at all. Whereas when Trina said it, my mom was like, yep, there you go, that was normal. So my mom and dad were always used to Trina having these moments. And actually, they take a lot of comfort in it in a weird way. So yeah, I don't know. I've never thought about it too much. It's just been normal to us that that's the way she was. But I do think Trina probably that night, I guess it's very hard to explain, but when you're so desperately sad that you're losing somebody, to know that there's somebody who loves them, who's going to guide them, there's probably something in that maybe gave us a bit of comfort. And definitely for Trina, being able to sort of see it and feel it somehow probably just gave her a bit of comfort too.
Amazing. You haven't passed that down?
No.
It skipped you?
It definitely hasn't come to me, and I can't see Lily doing it.
Just about to say, any chance, Lily?
I think Lily's definitely more in the life is for living sort
jumping on a scrambler bike,
yes,
I think, as well.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to be speaking to anybody, Not yet, anyway.
In everything that you've learned, everything that you've been through, and you speak about him so beautifully, for people who are listening today, having lost a brother at such a young age, do you have any parting words for them as to what you've learned, or if they're going through grief in the moment that they're finding it pretty hard?
Yeah, and I do think it's important that every journey is different. So what worked for me is not necessarily what's going to work for somebody else. So I do think that is one really important thing to remember. But the other thing is you have your own life to live, and sometimes people can get caught up in you lose somebody and it's really, really hard to see a future without them. But I do think neglecting yourself and sitting at home is only going to make life harder. I really, really believe that. And it might take time. It might take a year. It might take 2 years. It might take 10 years to find your own way out of it. But I do genuinely believe that getting out and being with people and trying to find the joy in life is the really important thing. Like Sean's favourite saying was, life is for living. I got it printed out and stuck on our wall. So when you walk into the house, it's up there on the wall and there's like loads of pictures around it. And in the middle of it, it's like all of the chapters of our life, if you want to call it, of us living. And like, life is for living. We're here to live. We're not here to die. And I do genuinely think that that's what we should be impressing upon each other. That yes, there is an eternal grief that you all go through, and that we will all always carry those people in our hearts. It never goes away. You're never going to forget your dad. He was one of the most important people in your lives, and he's with you all the time. Sean is like that with me. He will forever be in our hearts. But I would be so sad if I didn't show him what we're doing, you know? And I'm proud that we've managed to do that for him. So I do think for my message to people, it would be find something that gives you joy, because it's important that you live.
Jacqui Hurley, thank you for joining us on Parting Words.
Thanks so much for having me.
And now for some mindful minutes with our expert guest, Fiona Sweeney. Fiona is a renowned Irish breathwork expert, widely known for her holistic approach to wellness and her dedication to empowering individuals through conscious breathing techniques. Fiona is going to guide you through a breathwork technique to help you restore your calm.
Hi, I'm Fiona, and today I'm going to take you through a soothing breathwork practice that helps slow down the heart rate and bring your body into harmony and balance. This is an ideal breath to do at night time before bed to help make it easier for sleep to come. Before we begin, find a nice and safe, comfortable position, either sitting or lying down. And remember not to practice breathwork while driving, walking, or near water. This is a moment for you to pause. In a moment when we begin to breathe together, the focus will be on slowing down and lengthening our inhales and our exhales. We're not going to restrict our breathing. We're going to allow our breathing to slow down by softening and relaxing our bodies. We'll start breathing to the count of 3 and building then to the count of 4 after a few minutes. If you can, try to breathe in and out through your nose, but if it's not comfortable for you, breathing through your mouth is perfectly fine. So let's start. Gently close your eyes or soften your gaze and bring your attention to your breath. Don't change anything just yet. Just focus on how it is right now in this moment. Is it high in your chest? Is it low in your belly? Is it quick or is it slow? Is it gentle or is it heavy? Notice how the air feels cool as you breathe in through your nose and slightly warmer as you breathe out. On your next inhale, you're going to take a gentle breath in to the count of 3 and breathe out slowly to the count of 3. Breathing in, 2, 3. Breathing out for 2, 3. Breathing in for 2, 3. And breathing out for 2, 3. Breathing in, 2, 3. And breathing out for 2, 3. Continue breathing like this now in this steady rhythm of slow inhales and exhales, counting to 3 in your head. Each exhale should be gentle, breathing low into your belly. And each exhale is soft, never forced. Breathing in slowly and gently, and breathing out softly and slowly. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Your breath is light. Your breath is gentle. Your breath is slow. Moving now to a count of 4. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4. Breathing out for 2, 3, 4. Breathing in for 2, 3, 4. Breathing out for 2, 3, 4. Breathing in and breathing out. As you breathe, focus on relaxing your body, softening your eyes, softening your jaw, softening your shoulders, softening your belly. You're allowing your breathing to slow as your body continues to soften. Breathing in slowly and gently. Breathing out softly and slowly. Breathing in and breathing out. One final time. Breathing in and breathing out. Just rest now. Let your breathing fall back to its natural rhythm and rest. Can you notice how it's changed? Is it deeper in your belly? Is it slower? Maybe it's a little softer. Can you tune in also to how you feel? Do you feel lighter? Give yourself a few more breaths now in this peace and stillness. And when you feel ready, bring your attention back to the room or wherever you are. Remember, you can come back to this breath anytime you need it. Your breath is always with you. A quiet place to return to. One inhale and one exhale at a time.
You have been listening to Parting Words, a podcast from Rip.ie and proudly sponsored by An Post Insurance, supporting the plans that makes life's hardest moment a little easier. You can find out more at anpostinsurance.ie and subscribe now for more episodes in this series.